There's a particular kind of quiet that settles over the suburbs on a Sunday morning. Not peace exactly, more like stillness. The bins are out. Someone's mowing 2 streets over. A sprinkler ticks across a dry front lawn, and for a moment you think, this is it. This is what we worked for. But somewhere underneath that stillness, there's a number, and the number doesn't sleep. It started for most of us the same way. You got a bit older, rent felt like throwing money into the ocean, and someone at work mentioned equity. Your parents mentioned equity. The word started appearing everywhere, like the universe was gently nudging you toward a decision that felt less like a choice and more like the next logical step. So you took it, and for a while, it genuinely felt good. Signing the papers, getting the keys, walking through empty rooms that smelled like fresh paint and possibility. There's a pride in that moment that's hard to describe. Something settled in the chest. Something that said, you're doing all right. Then the bills started arriving with your name on them. Not dramatically, not all at once. It happened slowly, the way all expensive things do. The strata levy, the council rates, the hot water system that waited exactly 14 months before deciding to give up, the gutters, the damp patch in the corner of the second bedroom that 3 different tradies gave 3 different opinions about. And underneath all of it always, the mortgage. Sitting there like a quiet presence that never actually leaves the room. A lot of people don't talk about this part. The years after the purchase. The part where the dream starts revealing its actual maintenance schedule. Because owning a home in the suburbs, a proper one, with a garage and a backyard and enough room that you don't hear your neighbor breathing, it costs more than the mortgage. It always did. But nobody really hands you that number up front. You discover it in pieces, usually on a Saturday morning when you'd rather be doing something else. There's a study that gets quoted sometimes suggesting that homeowners consistently underestimate the ongoing costs of ownership by somewhere around 30 to 40%. That's not a small gap. That's thousands of dollars a year that people simply weren't factoring in when they sat down with the broker and talked about what they could afford. And it's not just the physical costs. There's the lifestyle that tends to follow the suburb, the second car, because the trains don't really reach out there and the buses run whenever they feel like it. The petrol, the school fees that feel obligatory now because everyone in the street is doing the same thing, and you start to wonder what kind of parent you are if you don't. The bigger fridge because the kitchen is bigger now and somehow that feels like it needs filling. The outdoor furniture, the lawn mower, the pressure washer someone convinced you was essential. It creeps in so gradually that you don't notice the weight until you're already carrying most of it. And the strange thing is, the lifestyle rarely adjusts back down. Once you've lived a certain way, once the kids are in the schools and the cars are in the driveway and the subscriptions are all running quietly in the background, the idea of pulling back feels like failure, like admitting something went wrong. So instead, people just keep stretching, keep finding new corners to cut, keep telling themselves they'll sort it out properly once things settle down a bit. Only things don't really settle down. They just get more expensive. There's a version of this story that plays out in suburbs all over the country. Both people working, often flat out. 2 cars burning fuel between the house and the city. Kids in activities because the neighborhood expects it. Weekends consumed by the house itself. The renovation that started 18 months ago and exists now in a permanent state of almost finished. And at the end of the month, after all of it, there's not much left over. Maybe a little, maybe nothing. Maybe the credit card absorbed what the income didn't reach. And yet, from the outside, it looks like a success. That gap between how things look and how they actually feel is where a lot of financial anxiety quietly lives. Because people aren't choosing between saving and spending. They're choosing between the mortgage and everything else is always winning by a fraction. The financial concept underneath all of this isn't complicated. It's called cash flow. And it's the single most honest measure of whether a financial life is actually working, not the house value, not the suburb, not the car. Cash flow. What comes in, what goes out, and what's left. When the outgoings of a life consistently approach or exceed the income, the margin for building actual wealth collapses. You can own an asset worth $1 million and still be financially fragile. Still be one leaking roof or one redundancy away from genuine stress. The asset doesn't protect you in the short term. The margin does. This is what the suburban dream often quietly erodes. The margin. And once the margin disappears, the psychology shifts in interesting ways. Spending on small things begins to feel justified because the big commitments are already locked in. The mortgage is what it is. The rates are what they are. But a coffee, a takeaway, a small impulse purchase, these feel controllable, even pleasurable, precisely because everything else feels fixed and heavy. It's a form of emotional spending that makes complete sense when you understand the pressure underneath it. The problem is that those small reliefs don't add up to relief. They add up to less margin. What actually rebuilds the margin is slower and less satisfying to think about. It's the decision to direct even a small amount, something like $200 or $300 a month, into assets that aren't the house. Index funds, a high-interest savings account, something that isn't tied to a single piece of real estate in a single suburb that you may or may not be able to sell easily when you need to. Diversification isn't just a finance concept. It's a kind of breathing room. It means your financial future isn't entirely sitting inside one address. There's also something worth saying about what enough actually looks like from the inside. Because the suburb was supposed to feel like enough. That was the idea. Space and quiet, and a backyard for the kids, and somewhere that felt like yours. And maybe it does feel like that sometimes. On the good Sundays, when everyone is home and nothing needs fixing, and the light comes through the kitchen window in that particular way it does in the late afternoon. But enough isn't just a feeling. It's a number that doesn't require you to constantly keep running to support it. And if the life you've built demands that both people work at full pace indefinitely just to maintain what you have, it's worth sitting quietly with that for a moment. Not with guilt, not with regret, just with honesty. Because the dream was never really about the house. It was about the feeling the house was supposed to create. Safety, permanence, a certain kind of calm, and sometimes the quietest and most radical question a person can ask is whether the structure they've built is actually producing that feeling or just consuming the energy that might have created it somewhere else. The suburbs are beautiful in a particular light. Early morning, before the noise starts, or just after rain, when everything smells like wet grass and concrete and something vaguely like childhood. There's real life happening out there, real love and real effort and real families doing the best they can with what the economy handed them. But the hidden cost is real too. Not hidden because anyone lied. Hidden because it arrives slowly, and because no one wants to be the person who questions a decision they worked that hard to make. Maybe the most useful thing isn't to regret the dream. It's to see it clearly, to know what it actually costs, to stop pretending the number isn't there, and from that honest place, to quietly start building something that can exist alongside it, a margin, a cushion, a fund that grows without fanfare in the background while the rest of life keeps going. That's not giving up on the dream. That's just being honest with yourself about the full price of it. And honesty, in the long run, costs a lot less.